Hello, and welcome back to the Calm and Connected podcast. I'm your host, Janine Halloran, and today's topic is thinking about an effective way to work on social skills in a group setting. So we want to create teachable moments for our kids when we are working with them in social skills groups. So it's happened to all of us where, if we're working with kids or we have kids who are struggling socially, we go over all the strategies that they're supposed to be using. We go over what it means to follow directions or take turns or be a good sport and that kind of thing. And you send them out into the world, to the recess, to the playground. And then 3 minutes later, they come back in and they are a hot mess. Something went wrong. It didn't go like they anticipated. Somebody did something and it didn't go well. We've all been there. And you think, gosh, I went over this with you and I'm not really sure what happened. It seemed like you were understanding, but when it really came down to it, when the rubber met the road, when you were out in that social situation, it didn't work for you. So clearly some different learning needs to happen. So there is a time and a place for teaching and going through strategies. But I think one of the big key pieces when it comes to social skills especially is having those real life teachable moments where we can, as the adults, we can help step in and scaffold for kids so that they can figure out the things that they should be doing and the things that aren't working and helping them come up with different strategies that are more socially acceptable. So I prefer to teach social skills in a social skills group because let's be honest, we as adults are much kinder to kids than other kids are to each other. So we are more patient. We take the time to listen. And it's just, that's not how kids are. So when a kid is interacting with another kid, they're not necessarily going to run into a child who's going to be willing to wait and until they finish their conversation about Pokemon, or a kid who's pretty flexible if a kid, tries to cheat at a game. Kids aren't always as flexible as adults are. That's fine. So it's cool to work one-on-one with a kid when it comes to social skills, but eventually they are going to need to have some real life, real world experiences and practice with kids. So what I love to do is use groups for that situation. It's a perfect opportunity. It is like a little microcosm of the playground or recess or after school clubs. It gives you a good place to start working on social skills in a group setting, which is exactly what you want. So the way I like to set up my groups is I like to first pick a social skill that we're going to work on for the day. So I'll just pick maybe, let's say, following directions. So that's the strategy in my mind that as the group leader, that's what we're working on. So we'll have a conversation as a group. I'll start to ask some questions like, what does it mean to follow directions? Why is it important? Have you ever had any times when you've seen people follow directions? What happened? What happened when you saw people not following directions? Are there times where it is acceptable or the right thing to do to not follow directions? So to give kids that conversation around just the social skill of the day. So in this case, it would be following directions. And then what I do is I set up an activity. So this is where the meat of the social skills practice comes into play. So we've just talked all about following directions. Now we're going to do an activity or a game that focuses on following directions. So an example of a game is partner drawings. So say you have 6 kids in the group, you break the kids up into pairs of 2, and then they each take turns being the leader. So one kid tells their partner what to draw. They tell them what color piece of paper to pick up. They tell them what color marker or crayon to use. They tell them exactly what to draw and how to draw and where to draw it. And then they switch roles. So the kid who first was drawing is now the one who is giving the directions. So they both get a turn to give directions and get directions. And that is where it will get messy and things will go wrong. And that is good. Messy is good, because that is when you as the adult can step in and say, oh gosh, I see something's going on here. Let me help you out and let's figure this out. Let's talk this through together. Like, I know this is challenging for this reason, so let's figure this out together. If things go smoothly, then that's golden. Then you just reinforce the good interactions that are happening in the group. Fantastic. I'm noticing that Johnny and Jahan are working perfectly together. That's so cool. I love to see what you're drawing. But if there's a problem and it gets messy, and most of the time it does, there's a reason why kids need to go to social skills groups. They are struggling with social skills, so expect messy. And then you can step in and say, oh gosh, you know what might work better here is if you did this. Oh, what do you need from that person that would make it a little bit easier for you? And so then after you've done the activity, then this is another big part of the learning model, is then doing a debrief. How did it feel to give directions? How did it feel to follow directions? So which one did you prefer? Did you prefer going and giving the directions or taking the directions? And I wonder why. By doing this, it gives them the opportunity to really start to think a little bit deeper about, oh gosh, what just happened? How did it go? What did I like about it? It's that self-reflective piece, and they can reflect to each other as a group. And it can be challenging. The things that we ask kids to do in a group are hard sometimes, but that's okay. We want them to have a safe, comfortable space where they can work on these things. I'd much rather have a kid have a hard time in group where I'm there, or there's another adult there that can help support them and walk them through it, so we can work on some different strategies they can use when they go out into the real world. And here's the thing, you can do this at home too. When you are playing a game with your family, that is the perfect time to work on taking turns and patience and listening and following directions and being a good sport and losing well and winning well. That's the opportunity. When you are doing something together as a family, like maybe watching a movie, you work on how to be together. You work on not talking over one another when you're sitting at dinner. So if you are with your family, that is a social situation. So there are all sorts of teachable moments that come up throughout the day when you are with your family. It doesn't mean that everything has to turn into a teachable moment. That's too much. It can feel a little bit overwhelming, I think. You don't have to turn everything into a teachable moment, but you can always focus on particular social skills if a child is struggling. So if they're really struggling with following directions, maybe you play a game together and you work on just following the directions of the game. And that's your teachable moment of the day. Or maybe you play Mother May I or Follow the Leader. And that tiny little 15, 20-minute chunk of time is where you work on those skills. And then the rest of the time, you just have a good time and hang out as a family. So I have 2 books that are all about social skills situations for kids. So the first one is Social Skills for Kids, and that has tons of group ideas, perfect for small group settings. So that could work at schools or in social group settings. That's absolutely perfect for that. And then for families, I have the Ultimate Playdate Guide. So that is, a great way for kids to build their social skills, build their friendship skills, build how to get along with one another in a really small, structured environment. So it's just one-on-one. It makes it a lot easier. It feels a lot less overwhelming than an entire group. But those are 2 great ways, both at school and with professionals and at home with family, where you can work on social skills for kids. So feel free to check those out over at encourageplay.com. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you are enjoying it, please give us a rating and a review. It helps us get found wherever you listen to the podcast. Also, if you want to be notified when new episodes come out, please subscribe. And that way, anytime a new episode comes out, you'll get it right away. And finally, one last thing. Don't forget about yourself. Take a few minutes, have a little fun, and have an awesome day.